Bonjour tout le monde, quelle belle journée aujourd'hui. À la fin de la dernière élection, les Canadiens nous ont donné un mandat clair pour en finir avec la pandémie et avancer sur les priorités de tous les Canadiens d'un bout à l'autre de ce pays. Et derrière moi, je suis énormément content aujourd'hui de vous présenter l'équipe pour faire ce travail. Merci mes amis. We have a team of familiar faces and new faces that are ready to put all their strengths, all their hard work towards delivering for Canadians in the coming years, continue to deliver on real change. There's a few things we know are top of mind for Canadians. First of all, ending the pandemic for good. Canada, as we all know, is a world leader on vaccination rates, but we're not out of this yet. We need to continue to remain vigilant, continue to support people struggling in places across the country, and continue to deliver on the priorities we laid out a few weeks ago on ending this pandemic. Whether it's vaccination mandates for federal public servants, whether it's moving forward to make sure that anyone getting on a plane or a train is fully vaccinated, we've moved forward on those. We continue to move forward with the provinces and territories on rolling out and paying for proof of vaccination certificates for both domestic use in the provinces, but internationally as well. And we're also going to be moving forward with legislation to better protect healthcare workers from harassment and intimidation on their way into work. Il faut garder les familles en sécurité et éviter les confinements, pas juste pour la santé mentale, pas juste pour la santé physique, mais aussi pour la reprise économique. Et ça, c'est l'autre grande priorité à laquelle les Canadiens s'attendent, qu'on s'attarde, de rebâtir une économie forte qui travaille pour tout le monde, qui sera inclusive, qui répondra aux défis de la relance avec de l'imagination, de la créativité, mais surtout de l'appui pour les industries, pour les gens qui vont créer des carrières pour l'avenir. C'est pour ça que nous sommes là pour continuer à appuyer les industries, les secteurs et les travailleurs qui sont durement frappés par la pandémie, tout en encourageant la relance dans les autres secteurs. We are there and continuing with a straightforward promise we made to Canadians many, many months ago, that we would have your backs as long as it took, as much as it took. And while we are still there to support the hard-hit industries from this pandemic and workers in those hard-hit lockdown areas, we know that part of having people's backs is making sure our economy keeps growing. We've had good numbers already. We committed to 1 million new jobs back in the last throne speech over a year ago. We've delivered on that. We're now recovered 100% of the jobs we lost during this pandemic. The U.S. has only recovered about 3/4 of the jobs lost during the pandemic. But we know there's more to do. From tackling the housing crisis, making sure that affordability remains top of mind for everyone working to serve Canadians, and continuing to move forward on historic childcare agreements to bring families $10 a day childcare right across the country. We still have work to do in New Brunswick, Alberta, and Ontario, as well as Northwest Territories and Nunavut, but I know we're going to get it done because families deserve that support. The same focus and urgency we brought to the fight against COVID, we have to bring to the other enormous crisis Canada and the world is facing, that is climate change. We know that fighting against climate change and preventing biodiversity loss are key for Canadians and for people around the world. That's what we're going to continue doing here at home while we head to Glasgow and encourage and challenge the world to do even more, go even faster, as Canada has. Il faut s'assurer que l'industrie pétrolière et gazière arrête d'augmenter ses émissions et commence à les réduire, tout en étant là pour appuyer les travailleurs dans ces industries-là à se trouver de nouvelles façons de travailler, des nouveaux emplois et des nouvelles carrières pour eux, pour leurs familles, pour leur communauté. On va être là pour cette transition que nous amène la planète. On va continuer d'être là pour les gens. While we move forward on building a stronger economy, while we move forward on fighting climate change, we need to include reconciliation with Indigenous peoples in every job we take, in every step of the way. Last week, I visited the Kamloops Tesowekbuk, and it was an extraordinary moment to hear from them, to talk about the path forward, and to recommit ourselves to doing even more. We've done a lot, but there's so much more work to be done. We've lifted close to 120 long-term boil water advisories over the past years. We've built or renovated close to 200 schools. We've passed historic legislation like the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People to move forward in partnership. But we all know, and this entire team is committed to doing even more, even faster in partnership with Indigenous peoples. Nous allons continuer de faire le travail pour livrer, pour la classe moyenne, pour les familles, pour les aînés, pour les jeunes. Nous avons besoin de bâtir un Canada plus juste, plus vert, plus prospère. C'est exactement ce que nous allons faire en équipe. We have a solid team with experience, commitment, passion to serve this country. I can't wait to keep moving forward with them for everyone. Merci beaucoup tout le monde.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Merci beaucoup. Le Premier ministre va prendre 20 minutes de questions. Les ministres vont rester disponibles pour répondre à d'autres questions par la suite. The PM will be taking 20 minutes of question. Minister will remain available for more questions after, starting with mic 1 with Ashley Berg from CBC.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. What message do you want to send to Canada's energy sector and the appointment of Stephen Guilbeault as Environment Minister when he's built his past career around opposing pipelines and the oil and gas sector developments?
There is not much of a debate anymore about whether or not climate change is real. There are some corners of the public sphere where you still see that debate, but for most Canadians, and indeed most Albertans, we know that we need to look towards the future. We need to bring people along, support them in the jobs they need to have, but also lower our emissions so we get to net zero. Indeed, the largest energy companies in this country are committed to net zero by 2050. And the way to do that is to all of us work together. We have a number of strong ministers, including Minister Guilbeault, Minister Wilkinson, and others, dedicated to the fight against climate change and dedicated to making sure that all Canadians have a brighter future because of it. We will be committed to working with Albertans, to working with people in the energy sector across the country as we build the kind of future everyone wants for their kids and grandkids, with both good jobs, prosperity, and cleaner air and fresh water. This is something we're committed to as a country, something future generations are demanding of us right now, and something we will continue to tackle with extreme and extraordinary ambition.
What specifically do you expect from Anita Anand in her new role as Defence Minister? Why make this change to this portfolio? And as well, what changes will you make to ensure that she succeeds in the tasks that you've given her?
I think one of the things Canadians have seen over the past year and a half is, as Minister of Vaccines, Public Service and Procurement, Minister Anand has been extraordinarily effective at supporting Canadians through a very difficult time. That's part of the job of the Canadian Armed Forces, to be there to support Canadians through difficult times, whether it be floods, whether it be international conflicts. We have seen the Canadian Armed Forces step up time and time again to save lives, to defend our values, to defend our priorities. At the same time, we know there is a crisis within the culture in our Canadian Armed Forces, and the women and men who serve in the Armed Forces deserve better support, deserve a shift in the kind of governance that they have, And one of the things that people will be learning about Anita Anand in the coming months is that she is a world-class expert in governance with decades of professional experience that she will bring to bear to make sure that the Canadian Armed Forces, the leadership and the operations thereof, are worthy of the extraordinary women and men who choose to serve in our armed forces.
Prochaine question, micro 2.
Oui, bonjour, l'inaudible, la presse canadienne. Vous avez nommé un Québécois à la santé. Vous savez ce que Québec et M. Legault pensent des ingérences dans ce domaine. Alors, je veux savoir, c'est quoi exactement le message que vous envoyez à M. Legault en nommant M. Duclos dans ce poste?
Moi, j'ai entendu très clairement des Québécois et de tous les Canadiens ce qu'ils veulent de leur système de santé, ce qu'ils veulent de leur gouvernement pluriel. Ils veulent des systèmes qui fonctionnent. Ils veulent des résultats. Ils veulent plus d'appui en santé mentale. Ils veulent plus d'accès à des médecins de famille. Ils veulent qu'on en finisse avec les délais. Notre approche va être très simple et très directe. Nous savons que ça prend plus d'investissement en santé à travers le pays, mais nous allons nous assurer que ça livre des résultats pour les Canadiens à travers le pays, incluant les Québécois. J'ai bien hâte d'entamer des discussions sur cela avec les provinces. Comme les gens ont vu, on a été là pour investir des milliards de dollars pour appuyer les systèmes de santé pendant la pandémie. Nous allons être là pour bâtir un système de santé, des systèmes de santé plus forts à travers le pays. Nous allons le faire en partenariat, en gardant au cœur de tout ce qu'on est en train de faire les résultats que les Canadiens méritent de recevoir.
Vous ne répondez pas, mais pas du tout. Vous ne me dites pas qu'est-ce que ça signifie de nommer un Québécois, là. Est-ce que vous attendez à une lutte avec Québec? Est-ce que M. Duclos est la personne pour faire cette lutte-là avec M. Legault?
Je pense que ce serait une erreur, Lina, de penser que seulement les Québécois se préoccupent de notre système de santé. Nous avons des Canadiens d'un bout à l'autre de ce pays qui sont préoccupés par ce qui se passe dans notre système de santé. Et j'ai choisi une personne extraordinaire qui a fait ses preuves à bien des niveaux, au Conseil du Trésor, pour les familles et les communautés, et dans sa carrière d'économiste à Laval, à l'Université Laval, qui a démontré sa capacité de résoudre des problèmes et de livrer pour les gens. Alors, j'ai très hâte de le voir en communication, pas seulement avec le gouvernement du Québec, mais le gouvernement de l'Ontario, le gouvernement de la Colombie-Britannique, des gouvernements à travers le pays. Nous sommes un gouvernement fédéral et je sais que de mettre les bonnes personnes à la bonne place, incluant Jean-Yves Duclos au ministère de la Santé, ça va faire la bonne différence dans la vie des Canadiens.
Merci. Mike 1, next question.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister David Baxter with Global News. What sort of specific direction will you be giving Minister Anand in crafting and implementing an independent mechanism to report military sexual misconduct?
Well, I want to highlight, first of all, that over the past years, even though there have been real challenges in shifting the culture at the Department of National Defence and the Canadian Armed Forces, Minister Sajjan has consistently been someone who has been there to fight for the women and men who serve in our armed forces and to push back against the culture that excludes and that marginalizes people. And I thank him for his leadership and his service there. And I'm excited about seeing the next steps that will be brought forward by Minister Anand. As you know, there are already a number of processes in place from General Carignan heading up a specific unit in the armed forces to draw together all concerns and resources, to Madame Arbour, who will be delivering a landmark report with the next steps on how we truly transform the culture of the military in deep and significant ways. There have been a number of changes made over the years. None of it has been sufficient. None of it has been worthy of the extraordinary men and women who serve in our armed forces. And that's why we're going to continue to do the necessary work to make sure that our armed forces are not only capable of continuing to step up and deliver for Canadians, but they're also going to be protecting all of those members within the armed forces from discrimination or harassment.
And now that the new cabinet has been sworn in, when will you decide whether or not Admiral R. MacDonald will return to his responsibilities as Chief of the Defence Staff?
In the decisions we make around leadership in the armed forces, every step of the way, we will be placing survivors and the women and men who serve in the armed forces at the center of all those decisions. And that decision is currently underway.
Thank you. Next question. Prochaine
Bonjour,
question.
Raymond Fillon de TVA. Monsieur Trudeau, pourquoi avoir exclu Marc Garneau de votre cabinet?
Je veux d'abord remercier Marc pour ses années de service en politique, en tant que ministre des Transports, en tant que ministre des Affaires étrangères, mais aussi pour son service remarquable tout au long de sa carrière, que ce soit dans les forces armées, que ce soit évidemment comme astronaute, comme scientifique. Nous avons tous bénéficié du travail et du service de M. Garneau. Il va continuer de représenter ses commettants. Il va continuer de faire partie de notre équipe aussi longtemps qu'on pourra l'avoir. En même temps, je veux souligner à quel point je suis content de pouvoir présenter une équipe renouvelée de gens, de nouvelles faces, de nouveaux visages qui font partie de notre cabinet, qui vont pouvoir contribuer énormément aux prochains défis auxquels on fait face en tant que pays. C'est jamais facile d'assembler le bon cabinet pour les moments, mais je trouve que l'équipe avec laquelle je suis entouré aujourd'hui est la bonne pour la situation et pour les années à venir.
Garneau aura un autre poste, ambassadeur par exemple. Et qu'est-ce que ça dit? Vous en êtes maintenant à votre 5e ministre des Affaires étrangères en 6 ans. Qu'est-ce que ça envoie comme message aux alliés du Canada?
Je pense que les gens à l'international voient très bien à quel point le Canada continue de s'impliquer dans le multilatéralisme, dans les grands enjeux, que ce soit la lutte contre les changements climatiques ou de tenir tête contre l'autoritarisme et les défis qu'on est en train de vivre envers nos démocraties un peu partout dans le monde. Nous allons continuer d'être un partenaire ferme et présent et j'ai très hâte de pouvoir travailler avec la ministre Joly sur l'échiquier international pour continuer d'avancer les priorités des Canadiens.
Merci. Prochaine question. Mike 1.
Good afternoon, Prime Minister. Jeff Pelletier from Nunatsiaq News. Over the weekend in Baker Lake, Nunavut, residents were protesting the closure of an elder care home. And there's also a petition going around calling for elder care services in every community in Nunavut. What will your government do to ensure that elders in Nunavut have that care so that they don't have to fly south here to Ottawa for care?
I recently, just a few days ago, had a conversation with Premier Savikataaq of Nunavut to talk about the work that we need to continue doing together. He certainly brought up the challenges faced by elders and others in the community, and we will continue to be there as a partner on both urgent issues like the water issue faced by Iqaluit over the past week, but also with investments in infrastructure, in housing, in support for vulnerable seniors right across the territory and indeed across the country.
And where does this priority lie for your new Minister of Seniors?
I'm very pleased to have our youngest member of Cabinet, Kamal Khera, be the Minister for Seniors. She will bring to it both her experience, her passion for serving, for caring for others that she's always brought as a nurse and a parliamentarian, and make sure that seniors from coast to coast to coast are well protected. I can also say that our Minister for the North, Dan Vandal, will be there as he continues to look for greater investments, greater supports for seniors and for everyone. Minister Vandal has been a long time active member of our team in the North and will now have extra responsibilities for the Northern Development Agency that will allow him to do even more for vulnerable populations in the North.
Next question, Mike 2.
Hi, Mr. Trudeau. It's Annie Bergeron-Oliver with CTV National News. On the First Nations child welfare case, will you be appealing the federal court decision forcing the federal government to pay for the harms done to First Nations children and their families?
This is an extremely important issue and an extremely difficult one as well. We are committed as a government to reconciliation, and that means we are committed to compensating Indigenous children, now adults, who were harmed by Child and Family Services. That is what we've been consistent on since the very beginning. We are also committed to ending the system of Child and Family Services that continues to remove kids from their communities, to give them unacceptable barriers, outcomes, and situations that no Canadian child should have to face. I am working extremely closely with the impacted ministers. We're reaching out to others. We are looking very, very carefully at what the right path is forward to ensure that, yes, we can compensate people who've been harmed in the past, but that we also have the ability to put an end to the ongoing harms that are continuing to happen in Child and Family Services across the country. Getting that balance right is at the heart of the path forward on reconciliation and the decision that we will be taking in the coming days on the path forward on the CHRT ruling.
With the respect, it's a fairly simple question. Will you be appealing, yes or no? I'm going to point out you did not answer that. However, I will move on. Do you intend on leading the Liberal Party into the next election?
Yes.
Next question, Mike 1. Next question, Mike 1.
Hi, Prime Minister Stephanie Taylor with the Canadian Press. Why make such a big overhaul to your cabinet when the election delivered nearly identical results for you? Were you unhappy with the job it was doing?
On the contrary, I think one of the things we saw very clearly in this election was that Canadians are expecting big things to be done by Parliament and by this government. Whether it's continuing to step up even more and faster on the fight against climate change, whether it's moving forward in even more concrete and tangible ways on the path of reconciliation, or whether it's looking at what it really means to build back better and ensure that as we grow our economy, everyone gets included. These are no small tasks. These are the things that Canadians expect us to do. And with a refreshed and reinvigorated team around me, I'm really excited about what we're going to be able to accomplish for Canadians. And I know that this team is raring to go.
Why is Minister Sajjan still part of your cabinet when there are others who lost their posts, when it was his handling of sexual misconduct in the military that was roundly criticized as being inadequate?
Minister Sajjan has fought all his life for Canadian values, for Canadian opportunities, and for fairness and equity. As someone who rose through the ranks of a challenging culture in our military and has consistently pushed back against the old boys network, I don't think anyone can be surprised at the kind of pushback he saw as he was trying to bring about changes over the past number of years. His passion to share Canadian values, not just through the work of the military, but around the world, will be exceedingly useful for Canada and our impact in the world as Minister of International Development. And I'm very excited to see him continue to build on the great relationships he's had around the world in getting things done for vulnerable populations and stepping up for women and girls in this new role. I'm also very excited about him taking the helm of the brand new Pacific Economic Development Agency. We've set up a standalone agency to support economic development and small businesses in British Columbia. And under Minister Sajjan's leadership, I know it's going to create tremendous opportunities for everyone in British Columbia.
Prochaine question, micro 2.
Bonjour, Juliane Lapointe de Radio-Canada. Monsieur Trudeau, c'est la deuxième fois que vous présentez un Conseil des ministres dans un contexte minoritaire. Qu'est-ce qui va être différent cette fois-ci avec l'équipe que vous avez bâtie?
Je pense que les Canadiens s'attendent à ce que ce Parlement travaille ensemble, mais les Canadiens s'attendent aussi qu'on livre de grandes choses. C'est exactement ce que cette équipe va pouvoir livrer avec de la passion et de l'expertise dans bien des domaines, avec l'expérience de plusieurs années de service, avec un souffle de vent nouveau pour nos nouveaux arrivés. Nous allons pouvoir travailler avec tous les parlementaires pour livrer de façon concrète sur les priorités, que ce soit d'en finir avec la pandémie, de lutter contre les changements climatiques, de travailler sur la réconciliation et surtout pour rebâtir une économie plus forte pour tout le monde. C'est l'équipe pour le faire.
Vous avez dit vouloir travailler plus vite, aller plus vite. Comment c'est justifié alors de retourner au Parlement 2 mois après les élections?
Je pense que ce que les gens ont vu sur les mandats de vaccination dans la fonction publique fédérale, que ce soit pour les trains, les avions, que ce soit pour les certificats de vaccination, que ce soit pour de l'aide aux citoyens ou des investissements pour continuer la relance économique, nous avons fait énormément de travail déjà et nous allons continuer de le faire. Le Parlement a des grandes priorités sur lesquelles nous allons livrer le mois prochain et je sais que nous avons tous très hâte de s'y mettre.
We'll take one last question at mic 1.
Hello, Mr. Trudeau. Mina Karaman-Williams, The Globe and Mail. 3 of your previous cabinet ministers are not here this time around. Could you explain why you demoted Bardish Chagger, Jim Carr, and Mark Garneau from cabinet? If you could comment on each specific case, please.
I think everyone knows that cabinet making requires difficult choices. Bringing forward people who've served, giving new challenges to folks who haven't, and looking at the right balance of regional diversity, experiences to deliver. And what I have right now as an extraordinary team that is reinvigorated, that is ready to step up and fight for the big things for Canadians is a team that I'm very, very much looking forward to working with.
Will any of them be given a new assignment outside of cabinet? For instance, there's speculation that maybe an ambassador position is a possibility. Is anything like that under consideration?
I'm incredibly pleased to be here today to present the team that is going to deliver on big priorities for Canadians over the coming years, whether it's fighting against climate change, whether it's moving forward on reconciliation even faster, whether it's building an economy that works for everyone while we end with this pandemic once and for all. This team we're announcing today is the team to do that. There will be, of course, plenty more announcements that we'll be making over the coming weeks and months about other things we'll be doing, about other ways we'll be tackling big challenges and other people to do that. Today, this cabinet is the news of the day.
Thank you. This is what ends the press conference for the Prime Minister.
Merci beaucoup tout le monde. Bonne journée.